High in the frozen silence of the Alps, a man lay face down in the ice. For over 5,000 years he was untouched, unmoved, forgotten. He died alone, or so we believed. But now something buried deep inside his body has surfaced. Advanced scans, never before possible, have uncovered a chilling truth. Ötzi the Iceman did not simply freeze to death. His final moments were violent, calculated, and far more disturbing than history ever recorded. The answers were hidden in his bones, and only now have they been revealed. What really happened to Ötzi, and why was he left to die in the mountains? The year is 3,300 BCE. Europe is not yet carved by nations, but by need. A world ruled by cold winds, sharp stones, and the fragile line between survival and extinction. In the shadow of the Alps, where present-day Austria meets Italy, clans move through narrow valleys, always watching. Rival tribes hunt the same game. Borders are drawn not with ink, but with blood. This is the Copper Age, the age of first metals of early farming and shifting power. Bronze knives are rare. Salt is sacred. Knowledge is traded like gold. And in this world walks a man. He is not a warrior, but he is armed. Not a priest, but he carries herbs used in healing. On his skin are tattoos placed along pressure points. On his back, a finely crafted copper axe, a symbol of status or survival. He moves through the high passes alone, or so it seems. Days later, his body lies still, face down in a remote alpine gully. No grave, no markers, no sign of burial. He was not laid to rest with honor. He was left behind. But even the ice could not keep his secrets forever. In the summer of 1991, two hikers strayed off the trail near the Ötztal Alps. As the sun melted the ancient glacier, something emerged from the ice. A human body, so well preserved it looked almost recent. Skin stretched taut, hands curled in a frozen grasp. Clothing still clung to his frame. Rescue services were called, assuming a modern mountaineer had met a tragic end. But when archaeologists arrived, the truth stunned everyone. This was no lost hiker. This man had died over 5,000 years ago. The press gave him a name, Otzi, the Iceman, and the world took notice. He was the oldest intact human body ever found in Europe, perfectly preserved by the cold, frozen in time. A media firestorm erupted. But while headlines chased sensational angles, scientists saw something else, an opportunity to study a prehistoric life in impossible detail. Layer by layer, they peeled back his story. What he wore, what he ate, where he walked, and perhaps how he died. At first, it seemed a miracle of preservation, but soon, Otzi became one of the most investigated corpses in human history. What can a body reveal when it has been sealed in ice for over 5 millennia? For Otzi, almost everything. Carbon dating placed his death around 3,250 BCE. But that was only the beginning. CT scans, X-rays, and isotopic analysis began to rebuild his life from the inside out. Otzi had lived not as a nomad, but in a settled farming community. He ate grains cultivated in the valleys and moved frequently across high alpine terrain. Traces of pollen in his intestines suggested he had traveled through multiple environments just hours before his death. His final meal? Ibex meat and einkorn wheat. Simple, but fresh. Someone had likely prepared it for him. Over 60 tattoos adorned his body, not decorative, but placed along acupuncture points. Perhaps for pain relief, early medicine, early meaning. But it was the copper axe that stunned archaeologists. Its craftsmanship was advanced for the time, and copper was rare. Otzi was not a common traveler. He carried status, or was marked by it. Then the narrative darkened. A deep wound in his back revealed a flint arrowhead embedded near his left shoulder. Blood loss would have been rapid, fatal. And CT imaging revealed a skull injury, blunt force trauma, likely sustained just before or at the moment of death. For decades, researchers believed he was ambushed, shot while fleeing, a sudden chaotic end to an isolated journey. But that theory is now collapsing, because new scans, using technology unavailable just years ago, have exposed evidence that changes everything. What they found hidden in his bones was far more violent than anyone imagined. In 2024, Otzi's story took a chilling turn. New high-resolution 3D imaging, conducted at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology, revealed what no previous scan could detect: microscopic fractures along the bones of his wrists and forearms. These were not the marks of a fall. They were defensive wounds. Otzi had fought back. His body told the rest. Skull scans showed severe blunt force trauma, evidence of a heavy blow to the head delivered at close range. It was not consistent with a slip or an accident. He had been struck, likely while already injured or on the ground. Blood residue analysis added a darker layer. Mixed in with his own blood were traces that did not belong to him. At least 4 distinct human blood types were identified on his clothing and gear. Otzi had been in contact with others, possibly in conflict, possibly killing to survive. And then there was his final position, face down in a gully, one arm twisted unnaturally beneath him, no signs of scavengers, no attempt to bury or cover the body. And most strangely, no one took his axe. A copper axe, incredibly rare at the time, valuable, symbolic. It was left beside him, untouched. To archaeologists, this made no sense, unless the axe was not forgotten, but deliberately left. A warning, a message, or perhaps a final insult. The evidence began to suggest a new possibility, one far more disturbing than a random ambush. Otzi was not simply killed, he was executed, and his body was meant to be found. Whoever left him there wanted the world, or at least someone, to see what had been done, and for over 5,000 years the ice kept that story sealed in silence. Until now. Otzi is often called a relic, a specimen, a preserved body in a museum display. But he was a man. He may have been a father, a healer, a craftsman. He walked among others who knew his name, who shared his food, and perhaps his fears. And then, someone turned on him. Was it political? The result of tribal tensions boiling over? Was it a betrayal from within? A trusted companion delivering a final blow? Or something even older? A religious punishment passed down from a belief system now lost to time. We will never know exactly what happened in those final hours, but we do know this. Otzi's death was personal, up close, intentional, and that tells us something deeply human. The world he lived in was not so different from ours. The stakes were higher, perhaps, life and death, hung on tools, weather, alliances, but the emotional terrain feels familiar. Loyalty, mistrust, revenge, a need to belong, a fear of betrayal. These are not new inventions of civilization. They are ancient, woven into us. And when he died, Otzi carried that story with him, not just in his wounds, but in what he left behind. Otzi was more than a body frozen in time. He was a person, caught in a moment of fear, desperation, and perhaps revenge. More than 3 decades after his discovery, Otzi's body is still giving up its secrets. Advances in forensic microscopy, isotope analysis, and protein residue detection now allow researchers to study him at a molecular level, reconstructing events not just from bones, but from blood cells and intestinal flora. Could the arrow that killed him have been tipped with poison, explaining how he collapsed so quickly? Did he know his killer? Was it a rival, or someone closer? And why, after such a violent death, were his most valuable possessions left untouched? His copper axe, his toolkit, his medicine pouch, all undisturbed. Was this part of a personal vendetta, or a larger conflict now completely erased from history? Then there is the genetic puzzle. Otzi shares DNA markers with modern populations in Sardinia. Was he descended from distant migrants? Or had his people been displaced? One question leads to another, and none have clear answers. As the glaciers continue to melt, other bodies, frozen for centuries, have begun to surface. Soldiers, traders, wanderers. How many more stories like Otzi's remain locked in the ice, waiting for a thaw? The ice preserved his body, but only now do we begin to understand the meaning behind his death. And Otzi may not be the only one. Other bodies are surfacing, just as glaciers begin to vanish. A man died 5,300 years ago in silence, frozen in a moment no one witnessed, forgotten by the world that once knew him. But the ice preserved more than his body. It preserved his story. And now, after thousands of years, he is finally speaking. But his story is not finished. What do you think really happened to Otzi? Was it betrayal, a ritual killing, or the final chapter of a forgotten war? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if ancient mysteries like this fascinate you, we are just getting started. From lost civilizations to hidden tombs, there are countless stories buried beneath the surface. Subscribe and join us on the trail of humanity's forgotten past.